You probably imagine our ancient ancestors as incredibly healthy, rugged survivors with flawless immune systems and perfect physical fitness. We tend to romanticize the Stone Age, picturing strong hunters eating a clean paleo diet and living in pure harmony with nature. But there was a devastating prehistoric disease that secretly wiped out entire ancient civilizations long before the dawn of written history. It was a literal biological apocalypse that swept across the prehistoric world and permanently altered the very DNA of the human race. Later in this video, you will discover the terrifying identity of this invisible killer, so keep watching because the truth will absolutely shock you. Until then, forget everything you thought you knew about the trendy modern paleo diet, because the real Stone Age menu was a deadly trap. Ancient humans were basically walking, breathing hotels for some of the most horrifying and massive prehistoric parasites you could possibly imagine. Scientists have closely examined coprolites, which is just a fancy scientific term for fossilized ancient human poop, and they were completely horrified. Inside these fossils, they found eggs from giant tapeworms that entered the human body through the consumption of raw or undercooked wild game. Imagine trying to survive a freezing winter with a 3-foot-long monster living inside your gut, constantly stealing your already scarce and precious calories. But carrying around massive internal parasites was honestly just the tip of the iceberg in this brutal, unforgiving world of primitive prehistoric medicine. Many people falsely assume that Stone Age humans didn't eat refined sugar or candy. They must have had absolutely perfect, cavity-free teeth. That is completely wrong, because their daily meals were packed with abrasive sand, campfire ash, and tiny shards of rock from grinding stones. This intensely gritty diet physically ground their teeth down to the absolute roots, exposing the highly sensitive nerves to constant, agonizing daily pain. Severe dental infections were so incredibly common and aggressive that pockets of toxic pus would literally melt right through the solid jawbone. The blinding dental pain drove people absolutely insane, forcing them to invent the world's very first incredibly bloody form of primitive dentistry. And do you want to know exactly what a trip to the dentist looked like 14,000 years ago without a single drop of anesthesia? The local tribal shaman would take a freshly chipped razor-sharp flint tool and literally drill directly into your rotting tooth by hand. To seal the agonizing open hole, they packed it with a mixture of beeswax, medicinal herbs, and highly toxic natural asphalt. The most mind-blowing part of this terrifying ordeal is that many patients actually survive these brutal procedures and live for decades afterward. But if you think a primitive root canal sounds like a nightmare, just wait until we look at the horrifying state of their bones. Archaeologists constantly unearth the shattered skeletons of ancient hunters that look like they belong in a modern medical horror movie. Hunting massive, furious megafauna like mammoths resulted in catastrophic physical trauma that is completely identical to injuries from modern high-speed car crashes. Yet, these massive, shattered bones often healed perfectly straight, proving that the ancient tribe never abandoned their violently injured family members. They carefully applied primitive splints made of branches and nurtured the wounded, sacrificing their own precious food to keep them breathing. Ancient humans also suffered massively from severe bone tuberculosis, a terrifying disease that completely hollowed out and collapsed their spinal columns. This relentless disease would literally fold a grown adult in half, making it absolutely impossible for them to walk or hunt for themselves. Despite this, skeletal evidence proves these severely disabled individuals lived for years, entirely sustained by the intense care of their prehistoric community. It absolutely shatters the myth of the savage caveman, proving that deep human empathy existed long before the very first hospital was ever built. But what exactly did these ancient surgeons do when the terrifying illness wasn't located in the bones, but deep inside the human head? If a tribe member suffered from chronic migraines, violent seizures, or erratic behavior, the prehistoric medical diagnosis was always exactly the same: They genuinely believed a malevolent, evil spirit was physically trapped inside the skull, and it needed to be violently released into the air. To achieve this, they performed trepanation, which is without a doubt the most extreme, terrifying, and shocking surgical procedure of the ancient world. A primitive surgeon would literally scrape, cut, or drill a massive hole directly through the human skull using nothing more than a sharp rock. And remember, this agonizing open brain surgery was performed while the patient was completely awake in a dark cave surrounded by chanting and drums. Modern neurosurgeons look at these ancient skulls today and are completely baffled by the results of these barbaric and highly unsanitary prehistoric operations. They have found hundreds of ancient skulls showing smooth, perfectly healed bone tissue growing completely around the massive surgical holes. This means that an incredible number of ancient people actually survived having their skulls cut open without a single modern antibiotic or sterile tool. Their raw, natural immune systems were so incredibly powerful that they easily defeated massive infections that would put a modern human in a coma. But even this legendary, superhuman immune system was completely helpless against the invisible killer I warned you about at the very beginning of this video. It is finally time to uncover the darkest, most shocking medical secret of our distant past, so prepare to have your mind completely blown. About 5,000 years ago, massive, thriving mega-settlements of ancient humans across prehistoric Europe began to suddenly and inexplicably drop dead. For decades, archaeologists were completely baffled by what kind of evil curse had managed to wipe out these incredibly resilient, tough prehistoric communities. There were absolutely no signs of massive tribal warfare, no devastating earthquakes, and no evidence of climate-altering asteroid impacts. The terrifying mystery was finally solved recently when modern geneticists successfully extracted ancient DNA from the teeth of these mysterious prehistoric victims. Hidden deep inside the ancient pulp, they found the distinct genetic signature of Yersinia pestis, the most horrifying bacterial killer in human history. Yes, you heard that right. It was the exact same Black Death, the bubonic plague, that would later notoriously devastate medieval Europe. It turns out the plague did not originate in the dirty medieval cities. It had been secretly stalking and slaughtering humanity since the Stone Age. This prehistoric strain of the plague was highly contagious and deadly, easily transmitting through the air from human to human across ancient trade routes. This invisible reaper ruthlessly swept through the ancient world, completely emptying out thriving villages while the desperate inhabitants watched in sheer terror. The ancient people had absolutely no idea what microscopic monster was killing them, and no amount of shamanic magic could stop their lungs from failing. But the most absolute mind-blowing part of this terrifying story is the fact that the human race did not go completely extinct in the dark. A small percentage of people possessed unique, random genetic mutations that somehow allowed them to withstand and survive this ancient biological apocalypse. They survived the mass extinction, grew stronger, and passed their highly resilient, battle-tested genes down to all subsequent generations of humanity. Modern geneticists now believe that you and I are sitting here breathing today solely because of those incredibly tough, plague-surviving ancestors. Their prehistoric bodies forcibly adapted to the deadliest disease on Earth, permanently upgrading the human immune system for the rest of written history. So the very next time you catch a mild cold and recover in a few days, you should thank your absolute savage prehistoric grandparents. They managed to survive giant tapeworms, melting jawbones, horrific car crash injuries, Stone Age brain surgery, and even the literal Black Death. And they conquered all of these terrifying biological nightmares in freezing damp caves without ever seeing a single pharmacy or taking a single aspirin. The history of ancient human medicine is a dark, macabre archive of incredible stubbornness and the wildly desperate, unrelenting will to live. Our species had to crawl through an absolute prehistoric biological hell just so we could sit on comfortable couches today and complain about a runny nose. Remember this terrifying truth. Your DNA was forged in the most brutal, ruthless, and unforgiving biological furnace that this planet has ever seen. You are the direct, unbroken descendant of the ultimate historical survivors, whose bodies literally learned how to fight and defeat death itself. If you want to uncover even more shocking, dark secrets about our brutal human past, make sure you hit subscribe and watch the next video.